56 to 60 door skins. We're going to show you how to install them. It's going to come to you basically as a finished door skin. It's ready to go, reinforced. Todd and Corey are going to give you the instructions on how to put this on. They've came up with a pretty unique way of installing them. So hopefully it'll save you some time and make a little nicer job on what you're doing.
So here we got the back side of our door skin. We've ground up the whole perimeter of the door skin itself. That's going to get attached to the framing of the door. To make it easier, we kind of just trim out some door sound deadening to put on the skin, so we don't have to try to struggle with it when it gets glued onto the car. So you just cut it a little bit shorter around where it's going to get glued, and then if you want to, you could tape this off if you're worried about getting it on the sound deadener itself, but most likely we're going to stay within this parameter around the skin, so it shouldn't touch it. Just wanted to show you guys what it kind of looks like before it goes onto the car, and kind of some of the prep that we do to get it to stick to the framing. And this is the front of the skin, and we kind of went through and marked the door skin and on the car, so when we put this back on, we have a reference on where the skin was prior to taking it off. So when we put it back on, we can make it consistent, and we're not guessing on where the skin was, and we just get a better fit for the gap. So when it goes on, theoretically, you should be able to kind of put it right back to where it was, and we'll still maintain that same fit, just making it more consistent and making sure that every time we put it on and take it off, it's the same.
And you can kind of tell too if you look down the door, the inner door skin without, or the inner door frame. When you look down the inner door frame, you can kind of tell that the gap is somewhat equal all the way around, so that way when you put the skin on, you're not going to be fighting it.
And this is what we were talking about earlier as far as stiffening up the door. This is just a piece of wood that we've zip tied onto the latch and onto this metal framing. And we also bolted this in so this door doesn't have that much flex. When this doesn't have the skin on, everything it moves too much. So we wanted to try to stiffen it up to make sure that while we're fitting it, everything stays the same. And this would be a good time too if you have anything that needs to be repaired on the inside of the skin. We went inside here and reinforced the corners of this door because they're known for cracking. So all of the corners of the doors have gotten reinforced and just matte and resin, so everything stays nice and tight. So we're gonna progress on here to the next step on getting our epoxy mixed up and getting everything ready to get applicated to the door framing, and then we'll end up showing you maybe in a time lapse on how we're gonna fasten the skin to the door with the epoxy on it.
What we've found in the past is whenever you put door skins on, or you separate a panel from a car and you go to put the door skin back on, one of the major hurdles is you can put the weather strip on, and sometimes it moves stuff around, and it's really sometimes hard to get the skin and the inner panel back together correctly so that you don't have any issues once it's all bonded together. So Corey and I have been working on this a little bit this morning, and what we found, and we've done this in the past, and it's always worked rather well for us. We'll take the door, the inner skin, we'll peel the outer skin off the inner skin, clean up all the way around the edges, make everything uniformed on the inside, go on the inside of the skin, the new skin, grind the inside of the skin, make sure that's all uniform. Then we start, make sure your striker's on, make sure your hinges are rebuilt. Then another thing we'll do is we start by just taping the skin on the door, fitting it. And a lot of times you can see how all this is just tape. Just tape down there, not screwed, nothing like that. And we've also put a piece of wood to support the inside of the door, because when you cut that outer out, we've got a piece of wood in here. So that helps put this end this piece of fiberglass back to where it was, because if not, it's going to want to roll back in because it gets real flimsy and it starts twisting. So what we've done is we've went through and we figured out, after we got it all kind of taped on there, figured out, made sure it fit the hole, made sure the door was adjusted right to the gap, and got the gaps pretty good. So then we left it taped on, and then we started working, and we just take these shims and we put the shims in there so the skin has a place to hit, so it holds it gives us, so when we're bonding it back on, because this can move a little bit, so when this shuts, we can get the panel flush. And also we know that the inner's not separated from the outer, and then when you go to put the weather strip up against the body, then that's where you always have your crushing problems, and then you go to shut it and the door wants to pop and it does all kinds of crazy things. So at this point right now, we've went through and we've got all basically put stops all the way around the door and made sure that the door fits, the lines, everything is right where we want it. So then Corey went through and taped the inside of the jamb and also the body, so if any epoxy comes out, it's not going to get on our body. Because the thing is you want to try to make this panel and this panel about as perfect as you can get, because this panel doesn't have any primer, there's really nothing on it. You know, normally what we kind of came up with just on this one is, if you look roughly, like this paint stick is 3/16, a little shy of that actually, but we know if that paint stick right there has the gap, we know that normally we're going to be really close. Because the major problem that we found on any of this stuff is when that weather strip goes, you'll get it all done, you'll get it glued together, you get weather strip on, and you change your weather strip, and you're pinching your weather strip, there'll be a tight spot, and then that causes the door to spring, and then you have to go back through and try to undo what you did, because the door will twist different ways. But we found that having hard stops is just work the best, and it fits the car the best. So next, when we come back, we'll have all this untaped, everything ready to go, and we'll epoxy the skin on.
So here we see Corey and Todd coming back with their epoxy to install the panel. We use a 2-to-1 epoxy mix, which gives us a longer pot life to work with. It's available on our website. So now the panel is on, and we want to keep pressure on it while it cures. If you've seen some of our earlier videos, you'll be familiar with our techniques for this. In this case, we use tape to keep the door down, along with a 2x4 clamped across the bottom. We also used hot glue to secure paint sticks over the door skin and the body of the car. You get consistent pressure while the epoxy cures, and move on.